Welcome everybody to our third session in the professional development autumn series with a focus on health and well-being. Today's topic is managing yourself in a challenging working environment. I'm sure everybody's aware that over recent years, particularly with the COVID pandemic, that there has been a number of challenging working environments. Can I start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the various lands in which we are meeting today and pay my respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Today I am working from Wotjobaluk country. The session will be similar to the first two sessions. We'll have presentations from two schools, and if time permits, some questions, and then we'll have a presentation from the director from DEET, who's from the Employee Safety, Wellbeing and Inclusion Division. And once again, if time permits, we'll have a time for some questions to follow that presentation. And at the end of the meeting today, we'll also include the poll, which we've been running each week to get a gauge on people's receptiveness to the processes we're using. Housekeeping, the session's being recorded, so please take note of that, and we're aware of the fact that a number of people can't make the session at the time allocated, and they do review the session during the following week. If you have a question, anybody has a question, please record it in the chat section. We'll keep an eye on the chat section and ask those questions as they appear. And if there's any question there that we haven't been able to answer immediately, we'll follow that up and get back to the person who's asked the question at a later date. So before we introduce our guests, I'll hand over to the Chief Executive Officer of CEP, Mark McLean.
Thank you, Brendan. Welcome, everyone. The idea for these PD online sessions commenced in the middle of last year in conversations with school leaders across Victoria about what would it take to get them involved in some PD, and the 1 hour time slot after school online certainly was the common element from those discussions, and much of the content has derived from there. Our three guests today from schools were actually all came on board, we'll say volunteered, let's call it that, late last year, and we thank them all for their involvement. CEP has always had a really vested interest in the recruitment and retention of quality people and quality leaders to our schools. Hence, we're also very passionate about principal mental health and wellbeing, especially in our rural schools. So that has been the theme for these 4 series, and this is number 3, and we're really excited with who we have on board today. So back to you, Brendan.
Thanks very much, Mark. Our first speakers today are from Katherine High School, and when I was Googling last night, I noted that the school is approximately 315 kilometres south of Darwin, and it covers an area the equivalent of the total size of Victoria. So I would have thought that's a massive challenge in itself. So I'm very pleased to welcome Nick Lovering, Principal of Katherine High School, and Conor Fennell, Assistant Principal in charge of workforce expertise from Katherine High School. So I'll hand over to you two and say thanks very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Brendan, and thanks for having us. And welcome to everyone, and down there in Victoria. And that's correct. We do cover, our students come from as far east as the Gulf of Carpentaria and as far west and south as Large Manu and Kalkaringi down in the desert. I want to start our quick session today with the acknowledgement of country, and we come to you, talking to you today from the ancestral lands of Katherine's Aboriginal peoples. We have three major groups here in Katherine: the Jawoyn, the Duggaman and the Waterman people, and we pay our respects to them as the traditional custodians of the continent, and whose cultures are amongst the oldest living cultures in human history, and we pay respect to the elders of those communities and extend our recognitions to their descendants past, present and emerging. My name's Nick Lovering. I'm the principal at Katherine High School. I've been in the Northern Territory for 17 years, and in that time I've worked across mainly rural and remote contexts, from very remote to some urban contexts, and I've worked in distance education. I've been the principal of 4 schools in the Northern Territory. Mark and I actually share a bit of common history in the sense that we were the principal of a very small school in Douglas, a place called Douglas Daly, which is on a government research farm. So it was great for us when we connected that we'd actually shared that common history. And I've been at Katherine High since May 2021, where we've been doing some really fantastic work in terms of basically turning this school around from a point where it wasn't in a great space. So a little bit about Katherine High. I think Conor is sharing those slides now.
I'm just trying. It doesn't seem to. It says it's connecting. Okay. Can you see the slides, everybody? No? No.
Okay. No, yeah.
Right,
We'll go
I
on
can share it for you if you'd like.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
No worries.
So a little bit about Katherine High School. Currently we have about 580 students, and we have students from 70% of our students are from a First Nations background, and they come from about 30 different language groups. So that means we have 30 different First Nations languages spoken within this school alone. And majority of our speakers speak Aboriginal Creole, of which there are many dialects, but there is at least 5 dialects of that Creole spoken within our school. We're the only public high school in Katherine, and so we draw from a very diverse mix of students, and we have a boarding house attached to our high school, and so young people come from all over the Northern Territory to come on board with us. And again, they come from as far east as Borroloola on the Gulf of Carpentaria, as far south as the desert in places like Wingi, Large Manu, and we do have some students that travel up from as far as Alice Springs and Epinara and some of those communities in the south. So big geographical distances that we work with. So a little bit about me. As I said, I've been in the Northern Territory since 2006 and have worked across a range of schools. I've got a range of photos there. There's one that looks like I'm talking to a mini Darth Vader. That's actually a camera. I worked in distance ed in the Northern Territory for about 5 years, and distance ed, I believe, holds the future for us here in the Northern Territory. It's something that we're world class at, and something we've been doing since 1953 in Alice Springs, when we first used the Royal Flying Doctor Service to provide lessons to students in remote communities. And I've also I've got some photos there of a boab tree, and I'm interested in dendroglyphs. Dendroglyphs are inscriptions made on boab trees that have lasted since the days of early white exploration of the areas, and there's actually some teams from Murdoch University in Western Australia studying dendroglyphs, and they actually make for very fascinating pieces of our colonial history and past. So the things I've learned living in the Northern Territory, and I suppose if we come back to our question around managing yourself in a challenging working environment, when you walk into a remote community, I think it's really important, and especially when you're working with First Nations people and First Nations communities, is you need to drop your bias at the gate. and you need to operate as a learner in the environment. And so I say the longer I've been here, the less I know, because I did definitely walk into the environment with a preconceived bias of working with Aboriginal people and Aboriginal issues. And I suppose after 17 years, I feel like I'm still in the early journeys of my learning in that space. We're educators first and foremost, and when we're living in small communities, it's very easy to be drawn into other aspects of community life. And for some of us living in very, very small communities, sometimes, for example, we can be some of the most literate people in those communities, and some of those, and the most mobile in terms of the way that we can access government services and support small communities, especially in very remote Aboriginal communities. So it's important to remember why we're there, because sometimes we can get lost in that, and we're educators first and foremost. So that's something that I try and center myself back to, is what am I here for? I'm here to educate. I'm a teacher first and foremost, and I'm here to teach young people, and always have high expectations. And in the communities and places where I have worked, there are a number of challenges beyond what we would say mainstream Australia would experience. And I'm sure many of you in the communities that you live and work, you would be able to identify that there are differences in small communities that are different to living in larger urban areas of Australia. And so at times for us as educators, we can move away from what's really important, and our expectations may change or vary depending on those experiences. I'll go to the next slide, Conor. I'm not sure if others can see the slide, but that's over to you now. Awesome. to talk, and then we'll go from there.
Like I said, I'm not sure. I'm going to try and share this just one more time. It just keeps saying connecting, but I'm happy to go without a slide because I'm Irish and I can tell a bit of a fable from time to time. So happy to keep going with that. But my name is Conor Fennell. I am the assistant principal here in Katherine High School. And my role basically is it's assistant principal expert workforce. And my role is to support our teachers in their classroom practice, in their behaviour management and classroom management work, and also to support their well-being, both personally and professionally. How I came to this particular role was, I went a bit of a backwards way into it. I was working down in Melbourne actually, and decided that I actually didn't want to necessarily be in the classroom anymore. And said I'm going to go and do something really different. So I ended up in a small remote Aboriginal community called Wellbeing. It's over on the west coast of the Northern Territory, and went there really just to save some.
They've dropped out for a moment.
Yeah, we've lost sound.
There you go. This is the first for us.
Oh, it had to happen.
Should we? We'll give them a moment to get back, or otherwise we might jump ship and wait for them to return.
Do we know why, Madison, they've dropped out?
I have a feeling it might have been their connection.
Okay. The other issue is
move on and
they've dropped out.
Yeah. We can link back to them once they return, Brendan.
Yep. So would you like to go on to the next speaker? What would you prefer to do, Mark?
Yeah, I think so.
The only thing at the moment is that we've got Conor on our screens. Can you do anything about that, Madison?
Yep, I'll look into that now.
Excellent.
Mark, would you like to introduce Fathma?
Okay.
Fathma indicated she wasn't going to use a PowerPoint, just speak to us. Maybe we can move in that direction.
Thank you, Brendan. So yes, Fathma Mauger has had over 30 years in education in Northern Territory in a variety of roles, generally around Darwin and Palmerston. Fathma was part of the original, what was called the Leadership Development Program in the Northern Territory, which was, I believe, around year 2000. Fathma may have to correct me. But that identified the 20 or so leaders deemed to have the most potential for leadership in the Northern Territory. There was a select field. Fathma was very lucky, fortunate, or skilled to be identified in that first group. And that really kicked off her journey into leadership, and I'm sure provided lots of great context. However, I know that whilst Fathma will give us her background, she's also going to go on a slightly different journey with us today and take us through some of the other challenges that we know many leaders face. So I've jumped around a bit there, Fathma. I shall pass over to you.
Okay, thank you. Now, I haven't got any slides. I wasn't prepared to take the technology risk. So I just thought I'd just speak. So I'm glad about that. But as Mark said, I'm a principal of Larrakeyah Primary School, a high-performing school in Darwin. It's a large urban school, approximately 500 students. I've been principal for 14 years. 10 of those have been at Larrakeyah Primary School. I'm going to talk about a topic that not many people talk about. It's quite a quiet topic. It's a personal topic, and it's about principals managing in the workplace when they're also a carer and the complexity that brings to principal wellbeing. People or principals these days, and I hear of other principals who've got elderly parents, family members, who have been diagnosed with diseases which involve requiring care, which impacts on individual family members. And you don't realise how easily this can happen to you. And one day your life just starts to change and it's not for the better. And I can speak from personal experience. And I'm just going to give you a little bit of background as to what that is and how that's impacted on me as a principal. My husband was in education. He was a principal, a superintendent, and once retired, he was still quite active in school councils and other educational organisations. And he should have been enjoying retirement, but in 2019, he was diagnosed with dementia. And then I discovered this whole new world about aged care and started to look into what support was available. And aged care is a very complex system to navigate. This involved applying for aged care assessments to determine home care packages and support with care at home. And once allocated a home care package, that then involved me trying to find a provider and then working out hours of support that were required each day at home. And by mid-2020, it became obvious that the few hours of support each day were not enough. And I'd come home after being at work every day to fix up the problems from the day. The tap's running, the door's unlocked, the freezer door left open. During the day, I'd be getting phone calls from neighbours about stuff. And then I'd be getting the program ready for him for the next day. The schedule on the whiteboard, food prepared in the fridge with labels, making up drinks, writing in the communication book for the support people who'd come. So I felt like I was doing 3 jobs. I was being a full-time principal, a carer, and I felt like I was being a single parent as well. My husband was assessed for full-time residential care, and after respite care at the end of 2020, he went into full-time residential care at the start of 2021. And we have 2 children at home, and the youngest was 13 when his father went into care. It's still a bit emotional for me, sorry. The emotional distress and grief and impact on family is huge, and you still have to perform a full-time job. And moving into residential care while giving relief to not have to think about the everyday care that was happening at home certainly raises other issues. And we've all heard about the Royal Commission into Aged Care and what happens in residential care facilities. So this has created a different stress now that he's in residential care. But I've had to manage myself and turn up to work every day with nobody realising really what I was going through. And there were times where I just felt like I was broken. And in our jobs, we're expected to focus on, you know, staff wellbeing, but there doesn't seem to be anyone who really focuses on principal wellbeing. And it's quite lonely. And so for the first time in my life, you know, I realised that I needed, I actually sought counselling through ESA. I sought help from the Senior Rights Advocate. I was able to talk to my executive coach because I get coaching as well. And I confided in a couple of people at work. But I think it's really important in those situations when you're faced with that to understand and know where to get support from, because it's not just going to come and jump out at you. You actually have to seek and look at ways, you know, where is the support out there? So you have to be actively seeking that. I also began to apply aspects of our staff wellbeing program to myself, and we actually are working with staff on Adam Void's Real Schools program. And in that, and I just acknowledge Adam, but he talks about the physical self, the mindful self, learning self, connected self, and purposeful self. And I realised in that while we're, you know, giving that sort of program to our staff, I really focused on that for me. And I realised I had to take time for myself. And I think as principals, we have to do that. We're so busy, but often we don't. And whether it was, you know, having time to have exercise every week, to have a massage, and to understand that some things are beyond my control. For someone who likes to be in control, and I think at principals, we often are like that. We're in control of lots of things at school. But, you know, I had to realise that there's some things that were just beyond me. They were beyond my control. And I had to realise that I'm important too. And I need to look after myself, because if I don't, it would impact on other people who are relying on me. You know, my husband's still in residential care, but also kids at home. And I think as principals, it's really important to be acknowledging that. And if I have to give you any takeaways from being in this situation or even ending up in this sort of situation, it's, you know, one, knowing where to get support, seeking support, but also understanding things are beyond your control, but also looking after yourself and having that time for yourself. Yeah, so that's my story.
Thank you, Fathma. Yeah, an amazing story. And as I said, this is a situation with dealing with the aged care or a variety of situations that many principals are suffering in silence, really. Just before we open up to any further questions and then jump back to Conor, Fathma, just my question is, what process did you go through around self-talk or preparedness when you're having meetings with staff with issues that were big to them, but compared to what you're going through, you know, could be fairly perceived as being a little bit trivial? How did you sort of manage to still be in that moment and give them the time they needed?
Yeah, you still, I guess with our training as principals and what we do, you sort of, you know, when you're at work, you put that, you can't compartmentalize, I guess, and that part's at the back. You know, it's like having that third space that when you get out of the car and you come to work, you're at work. And for me, I really had to focus on that. I couldn't deal with other issues. Once I got in the car and I was going home, I could deal with that. But at work, it was, you still had to deal with those things, and you still care for your staff. You do what you have to do as a principal. So that was never a problem for me, because that was my job. Well, that is my job. So that's just what you do. But yeah, there are times where you get these issues and you think, oh God, if you only knew what I was dealing with. And of course you can't say that, but yeah, it certainly has put things into perspective for me, where you think, you know, am I worrying about this small stuff, where the small stuff, while it's important for staff, some of that other small stuff as a principal that I used to worry about isn't so important.
Fathma, there's a lot of relatively inexperienced principals in the system, particularly down here in Victoria, and many of them struggle with the long hours and in some cases overwhelming workloads. If you were providing some advice on how to keep a satisfactory work-life balance, what would you suggest?
I would suggest to them they really need to prioritise what's important for them to do today at work, because we can all be here 24 hours a day. What's important today, and also to timetable in during the week when there is going to be time for you. Whether it might be not staying till 4 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, you might have to leave at a reasonable time because you want to fit in that game of golf every week, because that is important to you. And I think it's, you know, when you're a new principal, you're inexperienced, it's like work is overwhelming and that's all it is. But I think you have to timetable or schedule in that time for you and make it, that's not negotiable, and that's going to happen for me every week.
Okay, thank you. Now, I'm conscious of time. We may come back with some more questions, but I think we can hand back to Conor. I hope Conor's online. He is.
Yeah, we're back again.
Perhaps,
Thanks.
Good. If you could continue with your session.
Yeah, happy to, and apologies for that again. But yeah, look, just on the back, I think I was in Water the last time we met, and on the back of that, I think being in that remote community setting in that small kind of town, I definitely learned the importance and the value of looking after yourself. Particularly as you do, as I was at the time, progressing up and moving towards kind of a middle leader and then ultimately an assistant principal role. Some of the key things that I took away and key things that I do for myself to I suppose make myself feel better after a long day is not to take things too seriously. And the way I say it is fail hard and recover quick. I've had a lot of learning, particularly in the last 7 weeks, where I've taken on this assistant principal position. And there's been a lot that I've had to make decisions on pretty quickly. And some of them have been fine and others not so good. So I'm lucky that I have Nick here to back me up as well. But one thing I've definitely learned is not to take it on too much. You know, make the mistake, learn from it, and then move on as quickly as you can and as best as possible. The other thing too, and something that I've always held quite close to me in the last couple of years, but also something that I definitely have realized the importance of, is those relationships. And not just building new relationships with staff members, but also maintaining the ones that I had previous, and making sure, you know, we get out of the day-to-day, lesson by lesson, hour by hour, and into, you know, we can still go out and we can still do something social on the weekends or whatever. And one thing I always say as well, I'm sure you've all heard this, around the smiling before Easter. I think it's even more important as an assistant principal that I just make sure I am happy, and that I'm happy with the work I'm doing as well. Another thing that I'm very mindful of too, and again, a takeaway would be, you know, we can't do everything all at once. Nick often teases me as well about trying to master everything at one time. I've quickly realized that I can't do that. And it's literally taking one thing at a time, and focusing on that and getting good or better at those things, and then being able to go on to bigger, better things, or more important things that need to be covered as well. I'm going to move on there, Nick.
Yeah, so one of the things that we really focus on, being in the Northern Territory and being so far away from the rest of Australia, is we need to sell ourselves. We need to sell Katherine. We need to sell the Northern Territory. We need to sell the experience. Why do you want to come here? What motivates you? And it's in that I suppose our well-being sits. Because it's a constant reminder for us as leaders as to why we came and why we're still here and why we're contributing in the way that we're doing. So there's lots, living and working in a small community can be intense at times. And sometimes you can feel like you can't get away. And so for me, as a principal of a school like Katherine High, I've found what assists my well-being is when I'm working with new staff and I'm working with people that are coming to our school for the first time, is to recenter myself by talking to them about the experience of being in the Northern Territory and why we came here. And so we make sure that when we have people come into our system, that we're looking out for them as a whole. And we're making sure that, you know, they've got access to the things that they need within the community. They know which butcher shop's the best butcher shop to go to on the weekend, things as little as that. So the experience for us is important, and making sure that we come back to the key tenets of why we're here. And for me, I'm here on my adventure. I spent my first 6 years of my career teaching my home state of Tasmania and overseas. And while I was overseas, you know, I realised that I could travel anywhere with teaching. And so the Northern Territory was the next place, and I'm still here 17 years later. And so when I've had a tough day and when things are building up, I still come back to the point for myself is that I'm an hour and a half from Gunlong Falls, Kakadu. I'm an hour and a half from, you know, one of the most beautiful places in the world, and I can be there on the weekend if I want to, and that's why I'm here. So the experience for us is really important. The other thing is opportunity, and I believe understanding the opportunity that we have in small remote communities or remoter places in Australia, and for many of you as country principals, offering opportunity not only for yourself, for many of you, I suppose, being in a country area, the opportunity to advance your career, and maybe the first opportunity to be a principal, opportunity and capturing why that's important to you helps to recenter your own self within a challenging environment. And within the busyness of each day, coming back to your purpose and your why, you're taking your opportunities, right? And taking your opportunities, especially in the communities that some of you live in and the community that we live in, isn't easy. But we've chosen that and we've walked through that door for whatever reason that might be. If it's career advancement, then that's great. If it's for us, it's that opportunity to work on the edge. And for me, it's morphed from career development. That was part of it. I've sort of ticked that box. Now I'm looking for a deeper purpose, and my deeper purpose is around, and I don't call it closing the gap, I call it bridging the gap, because we're standing either side of the gap. Non-Aboriginal Australians and Aboriginal Australians were standing on a divide, and it's a two-way learning that's going to close that gap. So for me, coming back to that opportunity as to why did I walk through this door? Why did I come to Katherine? Why did I come to the Northern Territory? That self-talk to me is really important each day and helps manage through those smaller crises that lob up from time to time. The other thing I just wanted, sorry. Yep.
Yeah, Gaddie.
Sorry. And I think as principals is there's three main things that we would say to pay attention to your staff's well-being. It's not about morning teas. It's not about yoga sessions. Amy Green, who has written a great book with Adam Voigt about what is well-being and what isn't well-being. If you're organising morning tea to make sure that everyone's feeling happy, everyone will be happy for the half an hour that they can get as many sausage rolls down their mouth as they possibly can. But the real issues of the school will come back 15 minutes after they've digested that food. So have a career plan for your teachers. Make sure that you've paid attention to their improvement journey and they've done their improvement plan for the year. Make sure that you give them opportunities to have regular formal and informal chats. Okay, schedule 15 minutes with the hardest colleague that you have and check in with them. even if it's going to be a negative space for you, give them that time and learn to coach them through it, okay? Because that opportunity to get in touch with a principal will keep them or keep their wellness at a level that you may be able to manage. It may not be able to manage, but it's going to give you the best opportunity possible. And then monitor and support without creating a dependence. I always say to myself, Nick, under promise and over deliver. So when you're caught in a moment where you're corridor coaching, or if somebody catches you, you know who those people are. And usually they're looking to throw work your way that they don't want to do. Be really careful not to get caught in a space where you over promise, because then you'll under deliver, and then you get caught in a really tricky space, which then starts to affect your well-being. So there's just 3 tips from me to when you're working in the spaces that you are.
Yeah, and look,
Thanks,
just
Nick.
other than that, we are nearly finished. Just a couple of things.
Conor.
Sorry, on my end was around just, I noticed in being in Katherine High was around that wellbeing piece for both myself, making sure I was doing the work that I needed to do, and also supporting teachers to be able to do that work as well. So we established the graduate development program, which is for our new or graduate teachers who are coming in, just to provide that additional support. And we also set up some professional learning committees as well, just across the school based on some interest, so that there is a professional interest, which of course can grow some personal interest and some relationships there as well, which ultimately assists their well-being as well as my own, knowing that they're feeling good. We do that all obviously through a coaching and mentoring approach. And what we're trying to do is build that professional and personal culture in Katherine High, where we're addressing staff's needs, we're addressing our own needs as an executive team as well, and we're getting that more personalised professional approach to people and to managing people in school as well. And that's it.
We are done.
We are done now.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Conor.
Nick, sorry, I just got a question asking for the name of that book from Adam Voigt and Amy Green, was it?
I can't remember the title, but if you look it up, Voigt and Green, they've written a book. You showed me that. Was it straight out of her book? Anyway, Amy Green's got a wellbeing book. It's fantastic. It's really clear. It's really simple. It's got some really clear diagrams on what is wellbeing and what is not. And yeah, it's just really important you don't fall into that trap of taking everyone out for a lunch to make them feel good. It's actually about, have you got a plan for their career? Do they have an opportunity to talk to you about their career or their work or what their work is? That's about creating well-being.
Thanks, Nick. Look, I have a bit of questions. First one, a lot of our rural people are in quite remote situations, and they rely heavily on their local community. I'm interested, and perhaps all 3 of you to answer, how do you engage with your community in terms of your school and get the community on board with the policies and processes you have in place at your school?
Well, that's probably the key role of the principal, and it's about being intentionally inviting. And that's not just picking up the phone and inviting people, it's about your actions. And I would suggest to any principal moving into a small community, your number 1 goal as you begin is to be visible. Be at the front gate, welcome young people through the door, through the gate, and then be available to engage with authentically with families. Get involved in the community, and better than they'll come to you. So involve yourself. Find out if the local footy club, go and have a kick, go to training, have a activity lined up where you insert yourself into the community, because then the community will realise who you are, and then that intentionality will come from there. So I suppose just off the top of my head, that's probably the first thing I'd be doing.
Okay, Fathma, would you like to comment?
I guess for a large urban school, it's, you know, probably no different. You know, I'm still visible out there every day, welcoming kids and families, and, you know, making sure that they know, you know, the door is always open, engaging families in, you know, different ways through those school activities and events. And yeah, I don't think it's different. Whether you're in a, you know, remote setting or whether in an urban setting, it is the same, being visible and being, yeah, intentionally inviting. I agree.
Okay, thank you. One of the issues facing a lot of our principals is that the job can be completely consuming. I don't know, you may have to do administration over the weekends to keep abreast of what's happening in the forthcoming week. What do you do to overcome that idea of the job being totally consuming?
It's a really good question. It's taken me a time to get a handle on it, and I suppose the best way to approach it in your initial stages is to understand that there's no escaping some of that weekend work in the early stages. And I suppose for me, it was about quarantining. I just knew Saturday mornings from 9 to 11 was my time, and I needed to get that work done. And so when I accepted that was going to be the case, I shared it with my wife and my 4 children. And I said, Saturday mornings from 9 to 11, I'm not here. And that was agreed to for my family. Now, that might be a different time for another family. But once that was locked into my family schedule and my family routine, and everyone knew that I wasn't going to be there, the people around me then supported me to be well when I went off to do it and when I came back. And we celebrated if I got out the door by 9, and we actually celebrated if I got back in before 11. And that would actually then attach some, you know, oh, I'm done for the weekend. And for me, it was about, okay, Saturday afternoon is about watching the footy and then having a beer Saturday night. So understand that time's going to be there, but talk about it with the people in your life that are most important. Say, this is the time that I'm going out. And I actually liked it because it made me well, because it helped tie off the week. It helped prepare me for Monday. I could wake up Monday morning and walk through the gate and be present to do the welcomes at the gate, because I'd put the 2 hours in on a Saturday.
Or even doing the opposite and booking in the things that you really enjoy. Like, I'm a home ec teacher. I love cooking, so Saturday for me is my meal prep day, which I really like. I've got the dog running around, my partner's in the house, and I book that time in. I say Saturday is not the day for me to get work done. I'm going to take these couple of hours to kind of enjoy that, and then Sunday is back. I know that Sunday is prepping for the week. So either way, just making sure, yeah, you're doing the things you enjoy and they're making you feel full again for, like Nick said, Monday morning.
Okay. Fathma, would you like to comment?
Yeah, it's knowing about what works best for you and what can that feeling of being organised. And, you know, mine isn't the weekends because of other things, but, you know, I make sure I work best from 9 to 9:45 at night. So I know I'm going to probably stay not as late in the afternoon. So I might make sure that I'm, you know, left school by 4:15, 4:30. So I do that 45 minutes every evening because it allows me to catch up on emails or prepare something that has to be ready for the next day or whatever. But it's that feeling of, yes, I've done that 45 minutes. I'm not going to do any more. And then I feel like I'm on top of things. But it's knowing, I guess, what's going to be working best for you.
Thank you. Nick, in your presentation, you mentioned that you're first and foremost a teacher. And I'm interested to hear, once again, from everybody, how do you ensure that you've got that right balance to concentrating on teaching and learning and not have management issues administration overwhelming your day?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's about creating a narrative around that work and working with your teams and your leadership teams. Now, I know I've been a principal of a one teacher school and I've been a principal of a small school, and so I know what it's like to have a team around you, and then I know what it's like to not have a team around you. But if you've got that team around you and you've got that leadership team, make sure that everybody's accountable for a piece of the business work, but also people are accountable for that teaching and learning work. And look, as you get into a larger school, to be fair, like I'm a little bit less connected to the teaching and learning side of things as I used to be. But in your smaller environments, as a leader of the school, I believe you should be practicing as the leading teacher, and making sure that you give time to your staff to either coach, or if you need to be with your early career staff, mentor them in best teaching practices. So that should be your focus in a smaller school. And look, you'll naturally find the larger the school that you're in, the business side becomes more and more. But you need to develop the systems to stay connected to that teaching and learning side of things.
Okay. I don't know, Fathma, is there anything you'd like to comment there?
Yeah, I guess I could speak from the larger school, and I think, yeah, knowing how to delegate when and different roles and responsibilities within that leadership team, so it's not just all you, but making sure you are at all the staff PDs, the professional development, and having that that internal monitoring is really important. Like in a big school, we can't be, everywhere and in every classroom, but we set up systems in place for internal monitoring where, myself and assistant principals are scheduled each term to do lesson observations, to give feedback to teachers, to look at visible learning. So things like that, we still have that connectedness in the classroom.
Thanks, Fathma.
Thanks,
Nick,
Arthur.
Conor, Fathma. I'll now hand over to Mark, who will also introduce our final guest.
Thank you, Brendan. So with us today, we have Melissa Gaddie, who's the Director of Health, Safety, Wellbeing, Systems and Compliance Branch for the Department of Education. Melissa, I hope you don't have to introduce yourself with that title all the time. The department in Victoria certainly provides lots of supports for principal health and wellbeing, and I think not only is it a good reminder for those in Victoria, but could be a great learning experience for those across the state. So we don't want to take up any more time. Over to you, Melissa.
Hi, can everyone see my presentation?
Yes.
And can you hear me as well? Thank you so much. And thank you very much. And thank you for having me here today. I'm the Director of, as you said, it's a long title, of Health, Safety and Wellbeing Systems and Compliance Branch within the Department of Education in Victoria. And my particular division is called Employee Safety, Wellbeing and Inclusion Division. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about my journey, but I have to say that I was writing furious notes there because I just learned so much from the speakers that I've just spoken today, particularly in terms of principal wellbeing and also in terms of supporting your school staff as well. So thank you so much. The first thing to say is, oh, sorry, I'm not sure if it's, let me just try one more time. And whoops, is it sharing now? It is?
The front slide is, yeah.
The front slide, I don't know, it's not, let's just see if that moves across. I apologise. One moment, everyone, I apologise. I am having slight technical difficulties here. It's not, is it moving across now or no?
No.
Sorry, I might just, oh, has that moved across? No.
No, we're back on Conor.
Apologies. Let me just see if I can try again and see if that works.
Yes.
That's working. And are we on the first slide?
We are.
Oh,
We
thank you.
are.
Sorry. So I wanted to talk a bit about the journey. So the journey is that in approximately 2016, I came on board and got a team together behind me to really just drive around the state and to speak to principals from, big schools, small schools, rural schools, secondary schools, specialist schools. And essentially for about 9 months, I drove around the state, and my team and I just collected what we were listening, in terms of the concerns of our school principals, what they thought would make the biggest difference, how to set principals up for success, and what were the key things that principals wanted us to put in place in Victoria. And so out of that process, we developed a discussion paper. We sent it out again to our principals in the state, and we received feedback. And this feedback then enabled us to get funding from the Victorian government and to put in place, you'll see here, 7 different services. There's 6 here. It started off with 7, and one of them was really getting, building the capability of the people around the principal. The first initiative that we put in place was the school policy templates portal. So can you see my second slide now? What we were hearing here is that our school principals really were starting from scratch with every school level policy. So we put in place approximately 50 school level policies. We got our legal team to develop those policies. It took them about 3 months to write them all. We made sure that we provided good advice around implementing those policies. So I just wanted to let everyone on the call just be reminded, you probably know about it, but the school policy templates portal, to please go and check that out. The next thing we were hearing was that principals knew how to be leaders in teaching and learning, but when you became a school principal, you were a CEO essentially. There were a lot of technical supports as well. There may have been HR concerns and other concerns, and so we put in place a principal mentor program. So again, just a reminder today, that we would love all of you to access. It's also, you're also able to get your assistant principals, if you have them, to access it as well. We have a principal mentor program. It provides up to 12 hours of mentoring for our school principals. The academy will actually match you based on what you're seeking from the mentor, and they'll match you up with a recently retired principal that has been vetted and gone through really proper training, and they'll also have training in mental health first aid as well. But we encourage you again to use the principal mentor program. The third support that we put in place, and I might just go to the next slide, was proactive wellbeing support. And this is actually one that's really, really important. What it is it's up to 4 sessions a year. We do actually offer more if you need it, so please don't hesitate to ask us. But it is, 4 sessions a year where you can debrief with a very experienced psychologist. So that's someone who's got at least 8 years of psychological experience. And principals are using this to debrief about, how do we lead wellbeing in our school? How do we support staff wellbeing? Career coaching for you, planning for the year ahead, juggling the demand of, different expectations of the role. So you can see here, we've just put down some examples of how your colleagues are using the proactive wellbeing support program. What we've made sure as well is that at the 6 to 8 week mark, all our new and acting principals get a proactive call from the proactive wellbeing support program. But we do say that this is not a program for when there's been an incident or an injury in the school. This is a program for you to use just as part of your self-care, to book in 4 sessions a year so that you're going to have time to debrief with this very experienced psychologist. If you may not be lucky enough to have assistant principals, but people who do are able to, organise for the psychologist to meet with their whole leadership team as well, with their assistant principals and principals. So we encourage you to use it in that way as well. The next one is principal health checks. And this is where principals are able to go and get a detailed health assessment. It includes pathology tests. It's got a mental health assessment. It's got an Epworth sleep score to look at people's sleep. And you go to one of the 300 general practitioners that are part of this program, or if you prefer, you can go to your own general practitioner, and they provide you with a very detailed report. And the idea of the principal health checks is really to support you to check on your health and wellbeing before any issues escalate. We've been told that it's kind of the gold standard of principal health checks, and we're really keen for as many principals to use this service as well. The next service, and you can see there's a continuum, so we really are trying to encourage those proactive services, but we've also got responsive services for our principals. So the next one we were hearing was the complex matter support team. So this is where a principal may be receiving a lot of correspondence from advocates or parents with a lot of complex occupational health and safety issues. There may be complex student of behaviour of concern issues, and you really need one lead professional in the department to support you. That lead professional takes your call, they case manage it for you, they link you to all the other professionals you may need across the department. You may need legal, you might need people in our own area, occupational health and safety specialists. And they'll manage this complex case for you. If there is difficult correspondence from an advocate or from parents, they'll actually write that correspondence back for you, and you'll work also with the regions, and they'll support you to manage that case. So here we were hearing that managing complex cases can take up a lot of time for our school principals, and we wanted to make sure that we really wrapped around support, had one lead professional that was really supporting the principal and linking them into all the supports across the department rather than the principal, reaching out each time. And finally, our early intervention program. Again, if there has been an incident or an injury in the school, this is where we can actually organise a proactive call to a principal or an assistant principal. But again, you can just access this service. What it is essentially is that a case manager will take your call. They will determine with you what treatment needs you may need. It might be that you need psychological services. It might mean you need physiotherapy, dietetics, or exercise physiology. And they'll put you in that program and they'll refer you to the treatment that you need. I'm conscious of time, but you'll see here I've got the numbers for you to call. And so again, we really encourage, these services are ongoing, they're not going anywhere. And we really, would encourage you all to reach out to these services to support you. And just to mention in the last couple of minutes, we have a safe and well in education strategy. It's our roadmap of how we want to look after principals, school staff and corporate staff in the Department of Education. As part of that, we do have a mental health procedure and guide. So I've got the link there and we can send this around afterwards. That helps you to identify risks and show you what supports we have to manage any risks. We also, in this slide as well, you can see I talk about the School Community Safety Order Scheme, and these are strengthened protections for school staff against aggressive parents and carers. And so I encourage you to have a look at that. That's an order that principals can now use, and we've got a lot of support in the department. So you actually ring legal and they can support you through that process as well. And we've got some other supports there you can see in terms of work-related violence and aggression.
Just a 1 minute warning, Melissa.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll send these around afterwards. But finally, just to say, I've put down here some supports for leading health, safety and wellbeing in your school. So particularly we know OH&S compliance can be quite overwhelming. We have regional occupational health and safety support officers there to support you. So please feel free to give them a call. There's a link there and they can support you to implement the occupational health and safety management system. Similarly, we have an OHS advisory service as well who can provide you with that support for OH&S compliance. So you're not alone and please reach out to them. For your staff, we've got wellbeing webinars and tip sheets online. We again have our employee assistance program. So for your staff, this service is 24/7 and the number is there. It's also for their immediate families aged over 18. And the final thing I wanted to say is, everyone on any given day may be at a different point on that wellbeing continuum. It's okay not to be okay, and we speak to principals sometimes who are struggling, sometimes who are coping, and sometimes who are thriving. So just to be kind to yourselves. We do have a range of support, so this will be sent out to you afterwards. Reach out to me as well if you have any feedback on any of our supports. And yeah, we're here to look after you. So please do not hesitate to reach out to me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melissa. Over
Thanks.
to you, Brendan, to
Thanks,
finish
Mark.
off.
Yes, well, we've run out of time. It's 5 o'clock. Once again, thank you, Melissa, Fathma, Nick, Conor, for your presentations today. Most appreciated. The poll concerning today's session is in chat, and I'd really encourage everybody to complete the poll before signing off. So thanks to everybody for your participation today. Bye for now.